Hi everyone, I'm Joanna, and today we will be talking about film formats and library collections. This is a brief introduction slide to all the topics that we'll be discussing in this presentation. The primary areas of film collecting that we will be looking at are format, cost, and what is and isn't legal for film librarians and educators to do with their collections. Ever since film first became available for wide distribution at the turn of the century, libraries have been collecting them. Up until the 1980s, the bulk of most film collections were 16mm film reels that were typically only viewable on-site with the library's projection equipment. In the 1980s, the manufacture of home video on the video home system, aka the VHS, meant that libraries could begin offering rental services for patrons who wished to check out portable VHS and take them home to play on their own systems. By the early 2000s, most of the American viewing public had replaced their VHS tapes with the higher quality and more versatile DVD, and thus libraries were expected to update their collections also. Today, we anticipate the possibility of streaming services like Netflix to replace the DVD. Now, replacing all of these new formats with their predecessors comes with the complications of cost, and each new format comes with a different set of price concerns. Finally, the film, tape, and digital ages all come with their own set of copyright do's and don'ts, which we will look at in more detail near the end of this presentation. The first question that you might ask yourself as a film librarian with a potentially new format to add to your collection is, for how long is this thing going to be relevant to my patrons? Before home rental became popular with the advent of the VHS in the 80s, 16mm film reels were bulky and fragile and could only be viewed on-site at the library with the library's projection equipment. All of these factors made 16mm cumbersome, not to mention the fact that the oldest reels were sometimes highly flammable. The VHS was more convenient, but its lifespan was only about a decade. The DVD became especially popular in the early 2000s and remains the most popular physical video format to date, even with the advent of high-definition Blu-ray discs. DVDs are also portable and convenient to play on a variety of players, including brand-name DVD players, video game systems, portable disc players, computers, and laptops. In 2010 alone, Americans borrowed about 2.1 million DVDs from public libraries every day. This statistic makes libraries the second most popular DVD rental source in America. The number one rental source is Netflix.com, an online DVD rental provider. It rented about 100,000 more DVDs a day in 2010 than libraries. The newest popular film format, which is also a major component of Netflix, is online video streaming. Streaming is the transmission of audio and video across the internet. In 2012, Netflix reached a milestone when its viewers reached 1 billion hours of streamed media. This significantly helped up Netflix's stock and popularity. As of the summer of last year, Netflix had 26 million accounts around the world, which, just for comparison, is about the total population of Texas. Libraries with broadband internet capabilities are beginning to catch on to the streaming trend. University libraries in particular have started to experiment with streaming content for their students and patrons. The popularity of video streaming sites like YouTube, Dailymotion, and Vivo convinced Arizona State University to buy subscriptions to several third-party streaming sites. These websites function a lot like buying a subscription to an article database. The library buys a subscription, and then students and faculty can use their university credentials to log into the site and stream content at their own convenience. All of these format transitions come with their own set of costs. Switching to VHS in the 80s was particularly inconvenient for librarians because VHS wholesalers charged something called a preview cost, so that librarians had to pay a fee just to preview a film before they bought it. Today, there are many credible film review and preview websites like IMDb.com and RottenTomatoes.com that give librarians, and everyone else for that matter, access to film information for free. A lot of librarians with the technical capabilities to experiment with streaming have been tentative to do so because they are concerned about the cost of subscribing to educational streaming services like Films Media Group. However, the libraries who have bought into these services have overwhelmingly found them to be very affordable. We can look at Films Media Group's website as an example. This is an example of one of their titles. You've got the title of the piece, you've got a brief introduction summary, and then you can also preview the video, which again sets this apart from VHS wholesalers who would charge you to be able to preview something before you could purchase it. Down here are your pricing information, and of course you can buy this directly from the website. You can either buy the DVD plus streaming, or just streaming. And most importantly, all of these prices come with public performance rights, which means that your patrons or your students or your educators for 3 years can use this media in whatever format they need. So that's the sort of thing that they're doing at Arizona State. Seneca College is doing something slightly different. They have purchased the software and hardware along with the appropriate licenses to rip the content from their physical DVD collections and host the digital content on their servers. This is only an option for libraries with access to broadband and high-speed internet because it puts such an enormous strain on the library's personal servers. So, what is legal? Today there are 3 major articles of U.S. legislation that particularly affect library and school media collections. The first is the Copyright Act of 1976, signed into law by President Ford and put into place in 1978. The amendment, Title 17, is the act specifically talks about fair use. The second is a mouthful, Technology, Education, and Copyright Harmonization, or TEACH Act of 2003. And the last is the fairly recent Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 2008. There are 4 particularly useful points from the Title 17 of the U.S. Copyright Act. A public performance is any exhibition of a copyrighted work for an audience, and face-to-face is short for the physical building of a library, school, or government institution. So here where it says nonprofit educational institutions are allowed public performances in the face-to-face classroom, and entire films that have been lawfully attained can be streamed to the face-to-face classroom. They're basically saying that it is okay for libraries and schools to host public performances in their actual buildings in an educational setting. The other 2 points talk about replacement copies. Basically, if a legally obtained title from your collection is damaged and you look high and low and can't find another copy to buy because the title is either out of print or obsolete, i.e. they don't make the hardware to play it anymore, like VHSs and VCRs, you can borrow a copy from another school or library and make your own copy. The 2 other relevant and most recent acts of legislation in regards to school and library collections are the Technology, Education, and Copyright Harmonization, TEACH Act of 2002, and the Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 2008. Both of these acts focus on digital content. The TEACH Act states that accredited educational institutions can exhibit film clips via digital technology for educational purposes. This piece of legislation seems fairly straightforward, but another point of the Act also states that only reasonable and limited portions of a work can be digitized and transmitted to the web for purposes such as distance education. What constitutes reasonable and limited portions is a matter for some debate. Librarians and educators have yet to really come to a consensus on what it really means. However, it at least can be surmised from this act that showcasing full-length digital versions of copyright material online is not allowed. The recent Digital Millennium Copyright Act ensures basically that librarians don't become pirates. Most digital film formats like DVDs and videos downloaded from websites like Amazon and iTunes are embedded with technology to prevent unlawful reproduction. The DMCA basically states that regardless of whether or not a damaged title is obsolete or impossible to replace, the rights to copy a legal title are revoked if the title's format is embedded with anti-piracy technology. librarians are not permitted to attempt to circumvent technology in order to make a copy. So if you put in a DVD and it tells you you can't copy this, then you can't go any further. This is the end of my presentation. I would highly encourage you, if this sort of thing interests you, to look into my references for more information. You can see on here I've got the Copyright Act, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and the Teach Act. So yeah, you can refer to those if you'd like to learn any more about them. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. I'll be posting this to the Blackboard site. Feel free to comment directly to that. If anybody has any trouble with it, I'm thinking about putting this on YouTube. So if anybody would be interested in streaming it that way, please let me know. And my email address is also at the bottom, so if you want to send me anything privately, that's the way to do it. Thanks for watching.